going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. I had to take a little sneak peek. It is Wednesday. That's right. We're off to a great start here. Mean Streets coming your way right here on our FTN Network YouTube page. Also live on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here with you. Bringing in the Pope in a little bit. That's right. FTN's own Jeremy is going to stop by here. We are going to dive into some running back projections. We're going to just really have a fun NFL conversation. I know he's doing some prospect stuff lately. Jeremy and I are back and forth on maybe doing a couple prospect episodes here on Mean Streets, or just part of our FTN Network, TV/video content. We got a lot of stuff happening over at FTN Network, our YouTube page. You can subscribe for free. You guys know it. You guys already know. I know some people hanging out live with me during this show, and we appreciate it, but we also have All in Football. You can catch that on Game Plus Network. We have the PrizePicks Prop Show. We have Betting with Benny. Golf season is back here very, very soon. We will have a golf show for you. We have all kinds of content over at FTN Network for free. And Jeremy, and also a friend of the show, Brian Cook, who's going to join me tomorrow. I think the three of us are going to get together and talk about some prospects. Jeremy's already diving deep into them. If you follow him on Twitter, you are noticing a lot of great content from Jeremy all season long and lately as well in the prospect pool, as the NFL never stops. It really doesn't. Of course, we were talking championship week in fantasy football this week, week 17. We're going to revisit the betting lines. We're going to take a look at tomorrow's football game with a lot of questions surrounding Derrick Henry and the Titans. Are they going to roll this guy out? When it really is all about next week for the Titans against the Jacksonville Jaguars. You want to have a healthy Derrick Henry to try to punch yourself a ticket into the playoffs. We're going to dive into all that stuff, take your starter sit questions. Hopefully you guys got who you wanted on the waiver wire. I just assume that you're really only blocking at this point. You know, myself, try to block some of my opponents, with defenses. I don't want anyone picking up the Jets D or the Chargers D, even the Jags D in good spots. I did selfishly claim two defenses against my opponent who had the Broncos and the negative points that they produced last week up against the Chiefs this week. I already had the Eagles, been rolling them all year, Niners in some spots. So I did get a nasty message from somebody that I was going up against in the finals. It's like, wow, you got three defenses and I have none. That's the way it is. Maybe karma will come back to bite me for being a prick, but that's the fun in the games of this time of the season. It's all about the W, and you got to do what you can to get the W. So I like to hear those stories on who'd you block? Did you get blocked? Did you get burned? All those things. It happens. It's just the way it is. So Jeremy's stopping by in just a little bit. We're going to show you the running back projections. Tomorrow we'll dive into wide receivers and, we'll dive into quarterbacks and tight ends. But again, for the most part, you know who you're starting, right? You have some tough decisions potentially at the wide receiver and the running back position. You get battles in your head all the time at the tight end position. Do you start Higbee, coming off that big game? But Derwin James usually is on tight ends, and it's a bit of a tougher spot for him. But there's a lot of questions I'm sure people have for the quarterbacks. I mean, you're rolling out who you roll out. Yesterday, there's a question about Hurts. I don't think Jalen Hurts is going to play this week, but if he plays, you roll him out. Said that yesterday, and the pushback was, well, what if the game script isn't in his favor and he sits in the second half or in the fourth quarter? If he sits in the second half of the fourth quarter because the Eagles are up 28 points, he probably had a good first half. He probably tossed a couple touchdowns or ran for a couple as well. So it's easy to overthink things, but ride the studs that got you there. And one guy I could see you sitting is Mike Evans. Like, Mike Evans hasn't done anything really in a long time. Isn't a touchdown since week 4. The offensive line is atrocious in Tampa Bay. Would I sit Mike Evans for Zay Jones? Yeah, I would. Jahan Dotson? Probably. I probably would. He's got 7 touchdowns in like 8.5 games. I probably would at this point. If you got by with Mike Evans on your roster, maybe you just keep him on your starting roster for support, moral support. He's got a good resume. 2022 has not been great for him, but those are some of the decisions that I'm sure people do have, and we'll try to walk through those decisions here with you on this show. You're listening on iTunes and Spotify. Rate, review, subscribe. You're watching here live with me on our FTN Network YouTube page. Smash the like button. You have any comments, any questions, you guys know the drill. Leave them there and we'll get to them. And also, if you are watching on Game Plus Network, hop on over. If you have any questions, find the video on our FTN Network YouTube page. Follow at Chris Meaney. I'm always tweeting out the shows. And then you can leave the comment. You can leave the question in the comment section. That way I'll see it. I always circling back to try to help you guys. A handful of games in the NHL. Yesterday was okay. Overall could have been a better day, but on the show was pretty good. We did nail some NHL shot props. We talked about Thomas Hertl as our lead, and we will give a little bit of love to the Tampa Bay Lightning here today, a matchup against the Canadiens. So we do have some picks and some props a little bit later on in the show. A lot of football talk. I want to give some love just off the top to Luka Doncic, made history last night in the NBA. What an amazing comeback last night with the Mavs. 30 seconds left, down 10 points. These guys, Luka's crazy. Watching this guy all the time. I'd like to see the Mavs give him some help. Come on. They went to the Western Conference Finals last year. They lost Jalen Brunson. This year, great addition with Christian Wood. But who else? Can you get this guy some help, please, before he just leaves Dallas? Come on, Cuban. Make it happen, right? You got Connor McDavid getting wasted in Edmonton. You got Mike Trout getting wasted in Los Angeles. Luka kind of feels like that as well. Get this guy some help. Made history last night with a 60-point triple-double where he chipped in with 20 boards. I saw the list of guys who have had 50-point, 20-board triple-doubles. Not a lot of them. Of course, Wilt Chamberlain comes to mind, but 60-point triple-double in the way that he finished on the line, missing the free throw on purpose and getting lucky to get that ball back and getting it done. Deesh is in the house. Good morning, everyone. Glad to be back after missing a few shows. We love having you back here. Also glad not to be in 0-degree weather anymore. Well, speak for yourself. Deesh hoping Hurts or Lamar is back. If not, rolling out Darnold and Pickett again. Seems to work out. It worked out all right for you last week. I know that we talked about you getting Minshew and you got blocked, but Minshew again is absolutely in play if there is no Jalen. And I don't know, Deesh. I don't know if we're going to see either of those guys back. I don't know, man. Do you need Jalen Hurts this week to beat the Saints? I don't think you do. Next week is very important. I think it's Baltimore and Cincy, so there's still an outside chance that the Ravens could get the division. The Bengals are in a tough spot this week against the Bills. That should be a fantastic football game. There is a lot on the line for both teams, first seeds, division. But if you're the Ravens, are you pushing for that home game, or are you just, you want a healthy Lamar in the playoffs? I think it's the latter. I think you want a healthy Lamar in the playoffs. Kyle Wood's in the house as well. Heartbreaking loss in the league. He went 12-2. Cam Akers with a career game and no shows by Stevenson and Diggs didn't help. Still alive in Superflex. So still alive, still battling for something there. Yeah, we had a couple no shows. Stevenson was one of them. Diggs was in a tough spot, right? The weather, not great in that game against the Bears. There was a couple, stud players that didn't have great games. And Cam Akers, I don't know. I joked about how he's going to win us a couple consolation brackets, and he's going to win us a couple championships as well, because he's been fantastic over the past couple of weeks, and he's a decent spot this week as well. We're going to break, and we're going to bring in Jeremy. Leave your questions there. We're going to give you a sneak peek of the FTN projections. Our rankings are live over at ftnfantasy.com. Keep her locked. Lots of football talk here on Mean Streets. Welcome back in. There he is, PopesFFH, Jeremy, our very own of FTN Fantasy. All of his rankings can be found, all of his content over at ftnfantasy.com. And starting to see some news filter, nothing breaking, just like, Mike McDaniel expects Teddy Bridgewater to start. We saw this morning Carson Wentz is going to get the start for Washington. Jalen Hurts most likely not going to play this week. We're waiting on Lamar. There's some question marks at the quarterback position this week as well. Nick Chubb says he's going to play through a foot injury, so that is good for Chubb owners. It's not a fantastic spot, but week 17, man, things get crazy, Jeremy. As you know, this time of the season, you got to make some tough decisions, and we'll walk through them. But welcome in, man. How are things?
Things are good. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking to talk some good football as we head into, like you said, fantasy championship week. Tough decisions. I sat Nick Chubb last week. Kind of bit me.
Yeah, I mean, you got to make those tough calls, right? I mean, Mike Evans is a guy. It's like, what do you do with Mike Evans, right? Like, this guy hasn't been doing a whole lot. Do you start Mike Evans because the ceiling is terrific, or do you start a guy like, I don't know, Zay Jones has been really good apart from a couple games. Last week was, crazy weather things. So maybe we can get into some of that stuff. But I want to talk just off the top, not really to put you on the spot, but like, you're diving into prospects, dude. You were diving in. NFL never stops, as I said earlier in the show. It's season-long stuff all year, and then you're into the playoffs, but also, you get into draft stuff. You got free agency. We're going to see a lot of movement in the NFL. We're going to have a lot of draft content for you on this network, and you're diving into it as well. Is there a player or two that when you dive into the tape and you're looking at the analysis and, you're putting together some of your thoughts that really it's like, wow, I didn't know that this guy was that good? Or, hey, this is a guy that, depending on his landing spot, he could be a nice juicy pick for dynasty owners. I know I'm really putting you on the spot, but is there a player or two?
No, you're good. Yeah, I mean, I like doing this stuff. I follow him mostly throughout the college season too, but like a surface level. I never really break it down. That's kind of starts now. This year I started a little bit earlier. But yeah, I mean, there's a guy that I really didn't think. I know I've seen it on Twitter. A couple guys are really into him, but Israel Abanikanda. Sorry, little mucusy, and it's a tough one to say too, of course.
It's a tough one to say. Yeah.
Running back out of Pittsburgh. He really was a guy that like I knew about and I'd heard about. Like I thought he was a decent player, but you really start to watch it. Some of the stuff that he does is really NFL worthy. And he's a guy that I'm kind of finishing up this week that I think he's probably going to surprise some people come draft time. I think he's a name that is out there, but not super huge in a pretty deep running back class. So you're going to see a lot of these. I feel like the running backs are going to be where you're going to see a lot of that. There's a lot of depth in that class. And I think that those guys are going to be those types of steals that we'll see later in the second and third round for the dynasty managers out there. The wide receiver class seems a little bit on we'll say like the smaller size. I'm not as into it as it was last year. So I think running backs, we're going to see a nice influx in the NFL. Will be tough because most of those guys are going to be committee backs, kind of just the way the NFL is going. But like you said, depending on landing spot, some of these guys have a chance to make a pretty big impact that you might be able to get a little bit later in that second to third round of rookie drafts.
Yeah, and we've seen some of them kind of pan out like recently. Like Ramondre Stevenson a couple years ago was a guy that I got in like the late second of rookie drafts, and now we're going to be viewing him as, I don't know, like one of the top running backs, I think, in Dynasty, right? I mean, there's going to be no Damian Harris on that squad. We've seen a lot from him. I know he let some people down, and Kyle was in the chat saying a no-show from Ramondre, but for the most part, this guy has been really, really good, right? One of the best at, avoiding tackles and after the tackles, contact and things like that. As you were walking through running backs and like landing spots, I know you've taken a look and you're probably aware of some of the, unrestricted running back free agents this year. I mean, there's a lot of big names, dude. Like I'm going to run through here from spotrac.com, NFL free agent running backs like Saquon, Kareem Hunt, Rashad Penny. Not that we're crazy about Jamal Williams, Josh Jacobs, Raheem Mostert, Deontay Foreman. We got Miles Sanders. We got Jerick McKinnon. We got, I'm pretty sure Alexander Madison's on this list too. I'm just not seeing him right now. Damian Harris. Yeah. Alexander Madison. Like there are Tony Pollard. There are some running backs this year where, hey man, if they're in a different spot, They could be like Montgomery's another one. Jacobs, Sanders, Montgomery, Barkley. Like those are
They're going to be fun.
Pretty big names.
Yeah, and it's going to be fun to watch. Like, what do the teams do with them?
Yeah.
By the sounds of it, in that interview that we had from Twitter at the post game of the Raiders game, it sounds like Josh Jacobs might not be wanting to come back, but
a little ticked
we'll see. That was post game emotion. It's hard to gauge his actual interest from that. But I mean, some of these guys, like Josh Jacobs, is a big one for me. I mean, I know Barkley's Saquon Barkley, and we should definitely be enthralled with him possibly going somewhere else. But Jacobs, it hasn't really sustained a huge injury in the NFL. Still a young workhorse running back that's proven he can play all three downs. That going somewhere, like I mean, it's hard to picture him in like a perfect situation, but like, what do teams value? Do they go and spend money on these guys? But also, what's going to hurt some of these free agent running backs, I think, is how strong the rookie class is. Like, is someone going to go out and pay Josh Jacobs, absurd buco bucks, or are they just going to wait it out and draft, Tank Bigsby? Are they going to take, Bijan Robinson and get them on a rookie deal that's significantly cheaper and for a shorter period of time? So it's going to be interesting to see how this all pans out, but I'm excited because, like you said, that class is deep. And does Dallas move on from Tony Pollard? Does he stay? You've got, I think Damian Harris is gone. I think in New England, I don't think you're going to see them pay him. But some of these names, you would think that they're going to re-sign. So it should be interesting to see the Giants' eyes on Barkley. That could be interesting. So
yeah, there's it'll be something to follow for sure. And I know you're starting to see some teams say, listen, I'm not going to, I mean, the Patriots have been doing that for years, right? They don't re-up on running backs. It's like, that's it. Harris, you're done. We got Stevenson. We'll draft a couple more running backs and we'll just kind of rotate through those backs. It'll be interesting to see how some teams play that. Like I don't see the Eagles really bringing back Miles Sanders, but I mean, what a year. You hear contract year stuff all the time in sports, maybe not so much in football because a lot has to really break your way. But Miles Sanders 2 years ago had 0 touchdowns, 0. Mm-hmm. And this guy is 1,000 yards on the ground, double-digit touchdowns, and needs a new contract. And the Eagles kind of like really strapped for cash with some guys, but still having Hurts on a rookie deal is a plus for sure to have that quarterback to be able to afford it. But the whole Jacobs thing is interesting. And since you're on it, I want to just reference a tweet here from Vic Tafer of The Athletic in a second. But I want to get your thoughts on overall as this Raiders team. Like, because there was a lot of expectations for them offensively. They were pretty decent, man, except for some of the slip-ups lately. And they played most of the season without Waller. They played most of the season without Hunter Renfrow. I think they realized what they definitely had in Josh Jacobs. I know there was a new coaching system that came in, regime with Josh McDaniels. And they said, listen, we're not going to do the fifth-year option on Jacobs. Part of it, I think they wanted to see what they had. And I get it, right? If you're a new coach on a new team, you want to see. You're not married to anybody. You drafted Zamir White. You hardly played him, but you want to see what you have in Jacobs. And I think they realized, like, dude, this guy's the heartbeat of your offense. You mentioned a workhorse, hasn't had a lot of injuries, has battled through some stuff. Very underrated running back in fantasy over the past couple seasons too. And this year, roughly drafted definitely outside the top 20 in most drafts at the running back position. And as of today, he is RB2 and a half-point setting behind touchdown machine Austin Eckler. What do you think the Raiders do? Like Derek Carr? Is Derek Carr gone? Is Josh McDaniels one and done with the Raiders? Like, let's talk about this team overall because I don't want to get too deep into them because it's the Raiders, but this is the tweet actually from Vic Tafer. If the Raiders sit Derek Carr Sunday, it'll be the 4th game he's missed in 9 seasons and the first due to injury. His salary is $33 million next year and $7.5 million in 2024. It becomes guaranteed if he gets hurt. And front office met the last 2 nights to decide a decision for this guy. So they are thinking that if this guy doesn't play this week, I wonder if he's cut. Like that could be the writing on the wall. Like if he doesn't suit up this week or the final couple weeks, they're worried about the injury, right? If he gets hurt in the past couple weeks, maybe they can't cut him and some dead money there. But I just full circle. Raiders, who's the starting quarterback? A rookie quarterback, or do they go Derek Carr one more year?
Where I was really contemplating this. I could see them taking a rookie quarterback. Do I say he starts? I don't know. Do I think Derek Carr's part of the team? Probably not. I think that the last couple weeks have kind of put it into perspective. I mean, you can't blame everything on Derek Carr, but the passing offense has kind of fallen off a cliff. He's made a couple mistakes in there that just kind of seem head scratching. And it just kind of seems like that time has kind of run out. It seemed like last year he was on fire. He couldn't do no wrong. This beginning of the season, I mean, you saw the games, I mean, he's targeting Adams. They're having some big games. And then you get these games like this weekend, that just, there wasn't much. I mean, the weather was a tough one this weekend, but like, where do you go at this point? You're a team that's now in the bottom half of the league. Yeah, you just brought in Devontae Adams, but you're not any closer to winning anything. Why not? I don't know. I mean, it's tough because Carr's proven he can win games, but he's also proven he's very mediocre. So, you're not going to get to the dance with him by the sounds of it, and it doesn't seem like he's proven that he can get you there. So do you just move on if you're in that spot? I think it would be almost just play the draft. I feel like you could see like a New England style approach to the draft where it's like, yeah, say they like Will Levis. We'll just use him for an example. Hey, we kind of like him. We're not going to push for him, but if he falls to us, let's take him kind of approach and then go from there. I could see that. But with $33 million guaranteed, if they can get out of some of that next year for Derek Carr, I could see him cutting him. And I think teams would line up to an extent for him. Some teams that are a little bit more quarterback away. I think the Jets would be a good spot for Derek Carr. It's one of those simplified offenses, kind of what you're seeing with Brock Purdy in San Francisco. Purdy. I'm not saying Purdy's a bad quarterback, but again, no matter who you plug into the quarterback system in San Francisco, which is similar to the Jets, obviously, they find decent success. They're not asked to do too much. And I think Carr could fit into that. That's a championship caliber defense. And I think the Jets would gladly take Derek Carr if they could. I know people have linked him to the Colts because they like to pay random quarterback money. But I like the fit a little bit better if the Jets decide to move on from Zach Wilson. I don't think Mike White's really their answer. So long term.
Can you imagine if the Colts would do that again? I mean, I understand they've been put in a tough spot since Andrew Luck retired, but the guys that they have rolled out, like Jacoby Brissett and Carson Wentz and Phillip Rivers and Matt Ryan and then Nick Foles last week, it is tough to see. I saw those screenshots on Twitter as well, and Derek Carr in a Colts jersey, and I did have a couple of chuckles, but it's just really interesting to me because I feel like they have a lot of pieces on offense. I feel like when they are healthy with Josh McDaniels as a play caller, I do believe that they're a top 10 offense in the league. They have a lot of holes defensively, so it'll just be interesting to see what that team does. Do they bring back everybody together again for one more year? But again, that tweet from Tafer, just that, I may have butchered the final part of it, but his salary of $33 million next year and 7.5 in 2024 become guaranteed if he gets hurt. So, I mean, that's I kind of fumbled over that, but yeah, it'll be the fourth game he misses in 9 seasons, and the first not due to injury if he doesn't play this week. So he's been pretty healthy for the most part, and I think he's a decent quarterback in the league. It'll just, if he's gone, like what happens? Adams went there basically for Carr, his old buddy. So a lot of decisions to make in the front office with a lot of teams and the Raiders and that quarterback class too. So I think that they do end up drafting a guy, whether he starts or not, does remain to be seen. I want to take a quick break in a second, but last time we had you on, we talked about Garrett Wilson, and you were giving some love to Wilson. We both were. We were talking about the gap between Wilson and Elijah Moore at draft day. And we've really seen Garrett Wilson kind of step up here in the second half of the season, when it's not Zach under center. It looks like Mike White's going to be back. But out of all the rookie wide receivers, we'll put Chris Olave in there. Jahan Dotson's got 7 touchdowns. He's been pretty good, man, in a limited role this year. Drake London's kind of picking up steam lately. Olave's been quiet over the past couple of weeks. Out of all the rookie wide receivers this season, who's impressed you the most, and who do you like the most from like a dynasty standpoint moving forward?
I would say impressed. I'd probably say maybe I would lean towards, honestly, Romeo Doubs. I know he's not having a huge success. But I liked him kind of coming out. I just felt like he wasn't going to really like lock down a role. And he kind of did that early on, beat out Christian Watson early in camp, mostly because of injuries and drops and some stuff more on Watson's end than Dubs' end. But I think he's impressed me a lot. I don't necessarily like him the most going forward. But I think he was the most impressive of this wide receiver class. I kind of expected a lot of the same things to happen to a lot of the guys that everything played out the way it did, if that makes sense. And I didn't like butcher that so everybody doesn't understand it. But I kind of expected everything to play out this way. I didn't love Drake London's landing spot. I know he's catching on steam, but the way with Mariota plays quarterback, I didn't think that the way he wins and routes was going to necessarily work and mesh with Mariota. So I'm not surprised to see him coming on with Desmond Ridder, who I think is a little bit more gunslinging and willing to say, hey, give this a shot, Drake London, and throw him up the ball. Mariota, I feel like, doesn't necessarily do that. So I think that's where London's coming on. But for me, it's Garrett Wilson. I know he's probably one of the more expensive ones, but Garrett Wilson was my wide receiver one to begin with in this class. And moving forward, he's a guy that I want part of because, like we've said, Zach Wilson kind of just ruins all the offense there. We've seen it with Mike White. We've seen it with Joe Flacco. Even if they brought in somebody else in the upcoming season, I think that they'll mesh well with Wilson, just the way he wins in his routes, the ability to get open and separate quickly, just as quarterback friendly for a lot of people. So for me, I'm still going with him.
Is a lot. I agree with you. I would have Wilson and then London and probably Pickens and Watson for me. Like I like that for Olave. I think, there's a decent buy low window on a lot of these rookie wide receivers, like even Dubs potentially, as like Watson is that big flashy guy. You could probably get Dubs, with some uncertainty at the quarterback position, maybe in the future in Green Bay. Treylon Burks showed some positive things, but also, a lot of question marks at the quarterback position moving forward in the future. Probably get him for cheap. People may be sour on the finish from Olave. They may be sour on the quarterback play potentially from Drake London. Like I think a lot of these guys could be had. And Joey chimes in and says for him, Pickens. Like Pickens has been very impressive. He's had some really nice highlight reel catches this season. He seems to get targeted a little bit more when it's Kenny Pickett under center as opposed to Mitch Trubisky or whoever the heck they roll out there at the quarterback position. No Mason Rudolph, I don't think, this year. We did see him in the preseason, but it's an interesting class from wide receivers. Do you feel like this class will be better for wide? Because what I've noticed over the past couple of years, man, these rookie wide receivers, they've been difference makers in fantasy over the past couple of seasons, like game changers. I don't know if this class is as strong as this previous one.
I'd agree with that. I think that the issue I have with this class so far, and like I said, I haven't dug into a ton of them yet, is that it's I feel like it's one-dimensional. A lot of these guys are those smaller, win quick type of wide receivers, which is kind of the way the NFL is going. So it's not necessarily the worst thing. But a lot of these guys, I don't think you're going to have that depth. I feel like you've got a big question mark around Smith and Jigba. He had a really good end to his sophomore year. His junior year, he basically missed with the hamstring injury. So what are you going to get from him? He reminds me a lot of what George Pickens was in this last coming draft. He might have that same success. He might not. But Pickens, for me, was a guy I loved coming into the year. Tore his ACL. Unfortunately, fell in a lot of rankings because you didn't get a year out of him. I could see the same with Smith-Njigba. Man, my voice is like, I'm all mucusy. Couldn't always sickness.
I didn't even notice it.
I
didn't even noticeable.
But the class just seems a little bit undersized. It's really that Jordan Addison, Josh Downs, all these guys are around that 6 foot under-ish range, all under 200 pounds outside of Quentin Johnston. So I can see it being not as productive as last year's. I would be looking to buy a lot of the wide receivers from last year. Like you said, low on Burks, a guy that I think has flashed and shown you that with decent quarterback play, he can be really good. Jamison Williams is a guy that we haven't seen a lot of coming off of that injury. And even if they stick with Jared Goff, you can say what you want and mock about Jared Goff, but he's had a great year this year. Absolutely. And I think depending on if they keep Chark or not, there's going to be an open window there, whether or not St. Brown continues his tear that he's had in the past. So there's enough room in that volume to have that role. Olave's a guy, like you said, they get a different quarterback in there. improve the offense a little bit, I could see Olave continuing the success he had early on in the season. But all these windows are pretty low. Christian Watson is going to be a little bit harder to acquire.
Yeah.
But again, these guys I think are a little bit more likely to see that success than some of these rookies. I feel like for me, a lot of my rankings, once you get outside that first 5 or 6 wide receivers, I'm going to probably defer to the running back position in dynasty drafts. If it's super flex, there might be a later quarterback that might be worth it. But yeah, I mean, outside the top 5 to 6 wide receivers, I'm not super excited.
No, I just feel like there is a buy low window. I didn't even know I was going to bring this up with you, but as you were talking through some of the rookies, and I remember our conversation with Watson, or with Garrett Wilson rather, and just kind of put a bow on this. There's a lot of these wide receivers in kind of bad situations just from quarterback play. Like who's the quarterback for the Jets next season for Garrett Wilson? Is Ritter the quarterback next season for Atlanta? Do they dive into getting another quarterback? I think we know that Pickett's quarterback is Pickett. Watson, what's the future look like in Green Bay, right? With the quarterback situation. I like Jahan Dotson. I think he's a really good wide receiver.
Yeah.
Who the heck is the Washington quarterback, right? Who's going to be the Commanders? They're going to have quarterback number 14 since they lost Kirk Cousins.
Maybe that's Derek Carr.
Yeah, maybe it is. Treylon Burks, Olave, a lot of these guys. And you mentioned Jameson Williams too. I'm glad you did, because I had him written down here as a guy that I think is a good buy low. I think people are savvy enough to realize, when they took him, that they weren't going to see a lot from him this year as a big explosive guy. But I also think he could be had. His window is open to buy in the off season. And I think that Goff is. I think he's fine. I think, say what you want about him as a real life quarterback. He's had a good fantasy season. His home and away splits have been on both sides. Has been amazing at home and not so much on the road, but it's a good 1-2 punch with Amon-Ra and Jameson stretching the field. He's very explosive, and get him now while you can. And take a quick break, Jeremy, and enough of the dynasty talk. We're going to dive into the week 17 schedule, take a look at the game happening tomorrow, and I'm going to share some running back projections with you as well. So we'll be back in a couple. Keep her locked. Main Street's continuing here on Game Plus Network.
At DraftKings Sportsbook, you can bet on nearly any sport imaginable. The NFL, the NBA, college football, college basketball, golf, the NHL, tennis, Major League Baseball, MMA, and more. Download the DK Sportsbook app on iOS and Android operating systems, as well as on your desktops or in mobile browsers. Get the best bonuses using promo code FTN. Remember, the only way to gamble responsibly is to win. PrizePicks is a creative new way to parlay picks based on expected fantasy point production and single stat projections. You pick 2 to 5 players and predict if they'll go over or under their projected fantasy point total or their single stat total. When parlaying the players, the larger your parlay, the better the payout. A 2-pick entry pays 3x. A 3-pick entry pays 5x. A 4-pick entry pays 10x. As a bonus offer, there's a flex play option. This provides an added level of security on your entry where you can decrease your multiplier received if you miss one of your entries but hit on all the others. At FTN, we have PrizePicks coverage for every sport in both article and standalone pick format on our PrizePicks pick tracker. Use promo code FTN for a 100% deposit match on your first deposit of up to $100.
Welcome back in. Jeremy and Chris Meaney here with you. Mean Streets Live on Game Plus Network and our FTN Network YouTube page. Just kind of following, seeing if there's any news breaking. There's not a whole lot here. Rap Sheet says that Lane Johnson's going to put off surgery and that he will play in the playoffs. He's going to rehab the injury that he has. And it sounds like Rap Sheet saying the recovery time for surgery when he does get it will be 10 to 12 weeks. But obviously he's a big part of that offensive line in Philadelphia, so they'll have to manage without him over the next couple weeks. Let's bring up the schedule, Tyler. The Week 17 NFL schedule. It gets underway tomorrow night in Tennessee. Of course, you got the Cowboys. There is a lot on the line for both of these teams. You know, Dallas does have an outside chance of catching Philadelphia for the division, and Tennessee may be more just interested in next week. You and I talked, I think, in the green room about Derrick Henry, and that's the question I think a lot of people have. Derrick Henry, plus money for a touchdown, which you don't really see too often in the betting world. Is this guy going to play a full game? Does he try to play and the game gets out of hand and then they sit him? Looking at next week as Jacksonville holding down the top spot in the AFC South at the moment, and they are playing the Houston Texans, and they're 4-point favorites there. But these two teams, the Titans and the Jags, playing next week. Who would have thought, man? Week 17. Look at some of these games. I try to highlight ones that are like super meaningful, right? Of course, at the bottom, the Bills and the Bengals. I mean, it's definitely meaningful. But those teams are clinched. You got the Packers, 2 games to wrap up the season at home. They are alive. You got the Jets and the Seahawks, both teams playing a meaningful game in Week 17. The loser probably done. The winner a better chance, of course, to make the playoffs. You got the Commanders at home, going to Carson Wentz at the quarterback position, a chance for them to make the playoffs, currently inside a playoff spot. The Giants currently inside a playoff spot, a win, and they clinch. Miami and New England, both of these teams needing a win. If New England wins, I mean, Miami could be done. Sounds like they're going to go to Teddy Bridgewater, and then the Lions still alive in the playoffs as well. A lot of games here. Which one are you focusing in on? Which one is the most intriguing matchup to you? I'm sure you're going to go Bills and Bengals, and that's okay. You can.
I'm not going to go Bills Bengals.
Okay.
Seems too cliche, but obviously it's important,
Yeah.
I need to see Josh Allen do something. I know he's got a hurt elbow, but, we got to see a little bit more MVP.
You worried
Josh.
about their offense?
Yeah, a little bit. It scares me. I don't know. I feel
it's not
like
the same with that elbow.
It's not.
Not
and,
same.
It's hard to argue against the numbers. He has not looked very good the last, 6+ weeks. So,
yeah.
He's getting you fantasy points and he's winning games, and the Bills are finding ways. So that's a plus, because if he does turn it on, I can only imagine. But yeah, for me, it's within the division. I think the Dolphins Patriots game is going to be one that I'm keying in on. Honestly, I don't really want to face the Dolphins in the playoffs for the Bills. So, I mean, I don't know if they'd even get out of the first round, but I just think that's
really most of my friends that love the Bills are not worried about Miami at all. I think it's the Tua hate. They just like Tua hate. I just like so much Tua hate out there. It's actually sickening to hear. I think he's had a good season. I really do, man. Like, people say he doesn't make those anticipation throws. I've seen a lot of anticipation throws from Tua this year. He's probably got the best 1-2 punch at the wide receiver position in football in Waddle and Tyreek. We got a Waddle question here. We'll get to that in a second, Martine. But yeah, there's like he's had some dud games with some picks, and he hasn't looked the same lately. I think, San Fran really gave him some fits, and then ever since that game, he's been pretty shaky. But I suppose you're scared of the duo at wide receiver. But for me, if I were a Bills fan, I would be a little nervous about the Chargers, even though they're very one-dimensional. I still would be nervous about the Chargers team. I think more so than Miami because of the quarterback play. I give a little bit of an edge to Herbert over Tua. And I still like some of their defensive players on the Chargers squad. I'd be nervous about the Bengals. We'll see. Like, Allen and Burrow have never played each other. That should be really fun. And of course, you got Mahomes, but such an important game for Buffalo this week to hammer home, like, come through our house. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We've never seen Mahomes play road playoff games. He's always playing at home, a comfy environment. Go through Buffalo. Go play in Buffalo, which is a tough place to play. The weather elements are going to be probably extreme. I think it's maybe
the other stat I saw too is even the argument too is even for the Bills on that aspect is Josh Allen in general. I think in the playoffs, I don't know these numbers precisely because it was just something I heard on one of the radio shows or something, but I think it's 4-4 Josh Allen is in the playoffs, and I think he's only lost on the road. I don't think he's lost at home for the Bills in the playoffs. So if you have Super Bowl aspirations as a Bills fan, as I do, I mean, home field advantage could be key. I mean, he hasn't lost yet. So
exactly,
whether that's him or the Bills team in general, just that's big, and he's proven he can go and win in Kansas City and almost do it even in the playoffs. So like, that doesn't concern me too much, but like, you get home field advantage, you have to feel a lot better.
Yeah. Absolutely. So. Let's get to this question because you mentioned Miami, New England before I cut you off and got in there more about the Bills. But this question here from Martin says, should I start Waddle or Jahan Dotson? Waddle is a stud, but Bridgewater at quarterback. I didn't think Bridgewater was that bad as a quarterback. I think he's an accurate quarterback. I think he's a game manager. I would lean with Waddle here in this spot, even with Teddy. And I'm a big Jahan Dotson fan. I've been talking about him a lot over at Jake's show, and I played him myself, albeit I had a tough spot against it was a tough spot against the Niners, and it was a tougher spot for me to roll out other guys. But I think I lean with Waddle here. Where are you at?
What were the weeks that Tua missed?
So I'm going to go back and find it here for us. Okay. Actually, Tyler, let's break. Let's keep the balance of the show. We'll break. We'll get into some Teddy stuff, and we'll have Jeremy hang out with us for one more segment. We'll get into Teddy. Got another question about a quarterback, Minshew, Rodgers. So we'll answer a couple questions. We'll show the running back projections, and we'll dive into Teddy. So we'll be back in a couple. Hang tight. Welcome back in. So I'm sure you saw the numbers in the break. One game was phenomenal. One game. We're talking about Jalen Waddle here with Jeremy and myself, Chris Meaney. We're talking this question from Martin. Should I start Waddle or Jahan Dotson, who does have 7 touchdowns in like 10 games, but it's really 8 games with some injuries there. And Carson Wentz is coming back, and Wentz really focused in on Jahan at the start of the season. And he has been the guy that's gotten a majority of the end zone and red zone targets. There was one game against Minnesota, and to take it with a grain of salt because it is the Vikings after all. But Jalen Waddle had 10 targets, 6 grabs, and 129 yards. But also in that game, we did see a little Skylar Thompson, so it wasn't all Tua. And then another game where Tua started. I do believe it was the Thursday night football game where he suffered that injury against the Bengals, right? And he left. Teddy Bridgewater came in. He was 14 for 23, had a touchdown and a pick, 193 yards, and it was a dud game from Waddle. 5 targets, 2 grabs on 39 yards. Tyreek Hill was fine in both, 160 on 10 catches in the game against Cincinnati, and the game against the Vikings, he had 177 yards on 12 catches. As a Tyreek Hill owner in a lot of spots, I remember watching those 2 games closely. It did seem like Teddy's guy was Tyreek, and Tua kind of spreads it out to both of those guys. Man, I think I'm starting Waddle. I think I'm taking the explosiveness.
Yeah, I was more so concerned the same thing like you kind of just mentioned there with Teddy is where the ball went. But even in their one game against New England, which has been pretty stymie, I know it wasn't Bridgewater, but Waddle had 17 points in the first week of the season. So I'm going to stick with Waddle. And it's tough. But again, Dotson, yeah, you're arguing a lot of touchdowns, but Waddle's coming off of 2 back-to-back games with a touchdown, both over 110 yards in each game. And Waddle doesn't need necessarily that deep ball. You know, we see Waddle's key, and one of his favorite routes, at least that he wins on, is that over the crosser, over the middle there. Bridgewater's going to be able to. It's not that he can't throw that. That's a pretty easy NFL throw for him. So I'm going to stick with Waddle. Just too explosive. He's more likely to get you that 20 to 30 point week. Dotson, I feel like you're safe to see 15. But again, I think Logan Thomas is a guy that wasn't there at the beginning of the season that also saw a ton of targets last week when Wentz came in. So Wentz has always been favorable to his tight ends. So you could see a little bit of a slip from Dotson. I'm not saying he's going to have a bad week, but I feel more comfortable with Waddle than I do Dotson.
I would agree. The next question here from Stefan, and we'll get you out of here on this. Minshew or Rodgers? Really tough to sit Rodgers against a Vikings secondary that hasn't shown us a whole lot over the past few weeks, unless you're riding the Minshew mania train here against the Saints.
I'm going Rodgers.
Yeah.
I was in on Daniel Jones last week. Anybody playing the Vikings, I'm in on the quarterback against him just because, A, the Vikings can score a lot of points, and they've proven it against whoever they play. Also, then that other quarterback has to keep up a lot more throwing, and Rodgers has been kind of redeeming himself early on in the season. Not the greatest fantasy quarterback, but the last couple of weeks he's really turned it on. So as that offense has gotten better, so I'm in on Rodgers.
I only got like 5 more minutes left in the show, and I got to do 2 more blocks. So we got to let you go, but I have to show the running back projections because George did so much work for us this morning. So Tyler, if you could just show them quickly. You know, you got your studs here up at the top. There's no question with some of these guys that you're rolling out. Josh Jacobs is in a very tough spot, so that you see him like not as a top 5 running back, top 7 running back for the first time in quite some time. You know, Henry's near the bottom. Fournette catching a lot of passes lately. We have him ranked aggressively. And then I think we have a second page here as well with some running backs, Walker, Montgomery, Miles Sanders. Algier has been really good over the past couple weeks. I guess I'll ask you this. If you had to start one of the Detroit running backs, because I know Deesh is in the house sometimes, and he has both Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift, would you lean with our projections here that give Swift the edge over Jamal? Neither of these guys are doing a whole lot, especially Swift.
If Jamal's active, I'm going Jamal just because of the touchdown upside. They don't really like to give it to DeAndre Swift. But there's rumors he's nursing kind of an injury, so just watch that as that goes forward. I mean, if Jamal's out, I'm starting DeAndre Swift. I think he sees a good workload. Justin Jackson's likely involved, but I'd start Swift in that point. And
I like Brian Robinson a little bit more than these projections suggest. Actually would lean him over Zonovan Knight with Antonio Gibson banged up in a good spot against Cleveland. I think he's a sneaky running back. I mean, he's sneaky. I mean, he's a guy that's been on rosters for quite some time. But I think, if you're a little hesitant about Ryan Robinson Jr., I would roll him out with confidence actually this week over a guy like Swift. I don't think there's any question for me in my mind. Jeremy, you're fantastic. I can't wait to chop it up with you again. We'll dive deeper into some prospect stuff. My bad on the short time. I really just, wanted to chop it up with you because I know you're following prospects, and we're going to dive into that very soon here on our FTN Network YouTube page. So look for that. Give Jeremy a follow on the Twitter machine and look for all of his content over at ftnfantasy.com. A fantastic follow, guys, on Twitter. So as you see there for the audio people, Popes, PopesFFH. Get it done. Oh, wow. I'm very blurry. We'll be back here in a couple. NHL picks on the way out. Keep her locked.
I can't say enough about what we've got going on over at FTNBets.com.
At FTN Bets, your bankroll can be profitable. With the FTN Bet Tracker, you can tell your favorite experts across all sports, including the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball.
Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. I'm your host, Chris Meaney.
And with our premium content, you can take your bets to the next level. Only $49.99 a month. Use the tools the pros use at FTN. Our betting models run over 100,000 simulations of every game, with sides and totals in the NFL, the NBA, and more. Use the home run predictor to see who'll hit a bomb deep. Our NFL player projections will make you a DFS king. And the FTN Prop Shop always finds the best odds for your player props. All tools, projections, and models are powered by FTN Data.
A handful of games on the ice night in the NHL. Again, ftnbets.com/free for all my picks over at FTN. We keep track of everything. You can sign up for free and you get picks across all sports from everybody, including tools, projections, and access to our Discord channel as well. I'm going to lead here with Nikita Kucherov of the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm not taking his shot prop. I'm taking his point prop over 1.5 points for Kucherov at plus 124 over at FanDuel. The prop shop is your friend. Save yourself a lot of time and a lot of cash. Kucherov, multi-point showings in 4 of his last 5 games, including a matchup against the Canadiens, who he'll face tonight on December 17th. He had 2 points. He's got 15 multi-point games on the season. Only 5 games this season without a point. 9 of his his last 18 games, 50% of his games, he's picked up at least 2 points, and he's owned the Canadiens as well. His last regular season game last season, he had 3 points, 2 multi-point games in the playoffs when they played in the Stanley Cup Finals in the bubble. I went back to 2019, 2 of his 3 games, he had at least 2 points as well. He's a point machine. The power play is fantastic. The Canadiens are dirty. These guys are dirty. They live in the penalty box. The 4th most penalties in the NHL, and their penalty kill is not great. The Bolts are massive favorites today. I like Kucherov to have 2 points, and I have a little fun same game parlay for people over at Bet365 where I'm riding all of the Tampa Bay Lightning here. I like him to win the game. I like Hagel to get a point. He's playing with Kucherov, and he's playing with Braden Point at 5-5, and on the power play, he's got 9 points in his last 7. We got Braden Point to pick up a point. We got Stammer for a point, and we also have Point and Stamkos for over 2.5 shots as well. That one pays 10-1. So a same game parlay for the people out there. And we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to dive into a couple other props that I have for tonight's slate. One more segment here on Mean Streets. A couple more props on the way out here. Some shot props for you. And there's one assist prop here on this board, but I'm going to lead with David Pastrnak. 6+ shots in 3 straight games. He just played the Devils on December 23rd. He had 2 goals and 6 shots in that game. I know they played last night. It never looks, sometimes it doesn't look like Pass is going to get there. And all of a sudden, one power play or overtime, and you get lucky, or one shift, and he puts 4 or 5 pucks on the net. So I got to take Pasta anytime I see plus money. And I know it's the back-to-back and the Devils. And inside the same game, Jack Hughes, when these two teams played each other on December 23rd, I mentioned Pasta with 6 shots and 2 goals. Well, Hughes had 5 shots and a goal in that game. He's had 4+ shots in 4 of his last 5. Mark Stone is shooting quite a bit. He's not a guy that I consider, but he's up to 15 goals in the season. He's got 3 goals over a current 3-game point streak with 6 points over that span. He's had at least 3 shots in 4 straight games and 7 of his last 9. Some big shot performances from him lately. 3, 5, 8, 5. A good spot against the Ducks. They're among the leaders in shot attempts allowed, shots, high danger chances, scoring chances, all that stuff. So I like Mark Stone, and Riley Smith burned us the other day, but I think I'm going to go back to him at plus money. And inside the same game, I like Troy Terry as well. He's been fairly quiet, but the prices dropped down because of that. There was some 3.5s, about a month ago, plus money. He's had at least 3 shots in back-to-back games in 3 of his past 4 and 5 of his past 7. And then you see Hagel there for an assist. So Hagel, I mentioned in the last block, he's just been he's benefits from playing with Point and Kucherov. He's got 4 assists over his last 6 games, and he's got 9 points in his last 7. So consider the plus money assist play because of the 5-and-5 play with those 2 studs and the power play and all the penalties the Canadians take. And plus he's minus 140 for a point as well. We're out of here. Steven, yes, play Zay Jones with confidence, and good luck to you. We'll be back tomorrow with more projections and more picks and preview of the Thursday night football game. Have a good one. Talk to you soon. Cheers.